CP3 is gone. Chances are he won't be in OKC for long.
Nobody wants to play with him.
Are we even sure that he's better than Devin Booker or more valuable?
Not like they're all of a sudden a championship contender.
At a certain point, we need to consider that Chris Paul might be the greatest point guard ever. Hear me out, he is the one true point guard. You probably love Magic, and that's fine, but he played center in a game, and how hard is it to play point guard when you're 6'7" throwing lobs to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
There's a new sheriff in town.
To appreciate all that CP has done, you need to look at his stats, his teams, and the turnarounds he's had with those teams. After destroying the ACC, CP3 took his talent to the league. He went 4th overall, and I know at this exact moment you're opening a tab to look at who the hell went ahead of Chris Paul. The third player was Deron Williams, who had a great career. The second player was Marvin Williams, who had an okay career. At number one, it was Andrew Bogut. That's right, the Milwaukee Monster. That tall Foster's beer can somehow went ahead of CP3 and Deron Williams.
Something wrong, Yank?
No, it's pretty big.
In his first year in the league, Chris Paul won Rookie of the Year. He averaged 8 assists, 16 points, 2 steals a game. By year 3, Chris Paul was already an all-star and led the New Orleans Hornets to the most wins in their franchise history, albeit not a very high bar, but he also was the runner-up for MVP behind Kobe Bryant. New Orleans then began to panic that CP3 would leave in free agency, and honestly, who could blame him? His best teammates were David West and a 30-year-old Peja Stojakovic. Of course he was gonna leave.
That don't make no sense.
The next saga would be one of the weirdest things in NBA history. The Hornets were a mess and decided to send Chris Paul to the Los Angeles Lakers. In a 3-team deal where the Lakers would get Paul, the Hornets would get all of this. Look, they're getting Lamar Odom, Kevin Martin, Luis Scola, and Goran Dragic. Like, that's a nice package for them. The Rockets obviously just get Pau Gasol and some draft picks. David Stern vetoed the trade, which, let's just pause for a second and consider the fact that David Stern is the only reason Kobe Bryant didn't win his 6th or 7th rings. The Lakers would have gotten Dwight the next year or the next summer, and perhaps Chris Paul manages Kobe and Dwight's egos. Or perhaps the Lakers melt down at a level we have never seen. It would have been amazing either way, a show, entertaining, just the absolute best type of meltdown. We didn't get that. Instead, the Hornets would send Chris Paul to the Clippers, and they would get all of Al-Farouq Aminu, Eric Gordon, Chris Kaman, and a draft pick. That draft pick would ultimately become Anthony Davis, but who at the time could have known the lottery would shake out like that? This trade without AD is no better than the Lakers offer, and it is a wild thing to think about the fact that that may have been a more rigged lottery than the Ewing one. Chris Paul would end up in Los Angeles like he wanted, and he'd get paired up with the 2 best dunkers in the league. And it's the excitement on DeAndre and Blake's faces when they found out they were going to get to play with this floor general. And it's so adorably naive because they wouldn't win anything. And that's the saddest part, is that Blake, look at the joy on his face. Look at him. Little does he know he's going to be catching lobs, not have anything to show for it, and ultimately get shipped away to play at Little Caesars Arena. Now, the Clippers in their history had made the playoffs, but they were never considered one of the most exciting teams in the league. Chris Paul made the Clippers must-see TV every single night.
I'm rolling with the Los Angeles Clippers.
If you go back to the peak of Lob City and look at the landscape of the West, the Clippers looked destined to run the table for the next couple years. The only problem is they would run into the buzzsaw that was the Golden State Warriors. Okay, maybe that's a bit generous, seeing as how the Thunder were stacked at the time, but OKC was about to fumble the bag by letting Harden leave, so it really could have been the Clippers West. Chris Paul would be the leader when the Clippers players were forced to deal with their racist, weirdo owner being exposed as a racist weirdo.
We got through it because we did it as a team.
Ultimately, the Clippers would underachieve and never make it to the Western Conference Finals like they probably should have. Under the guidance of Steve Ballmer, the Clippers would basically decide to blow it all up, sending Chris Paul to the Rockets. Now, the Rockets were good, but they also kind of were falling below expectations. Just ask Sean Yu about that. With Paul and Harden running the show, the Rockets had a real shot to go head-to-head with the Warriors. Chris Paul doesn't get hurt, the Rockets beat the Warriors and play LeBron in the finals, and we get a nice mix of things instead of having to watch the Warriors win title after title after title. After back-to-back years of coming up short against the Warriors, rumors began to swirl about James Harden not liking Chris Paul.
You guys need help?
No, we're good.
Unfortunately for CP, he would get shipped off to Oklahoma City. At this point, most of the media wrote off Chris Paul.
I look at Chris Paul as an irritating player in decline.
I mean, the Thunder had nothing of note and were basically just a young group of up-and-coming players. What's Chris Paul gonna do over there with his aging legs? Get them to the playoffs? Well, yeah, he would get them to the postseason and almost beat his former team. Surely they won't let this guy go, right? Nope. He gets shipped off to the Suns, a franchise that hasn't mattered or made the playoffs for almost a decade. What does the point guard do? He guides them to the number 2 seed in the West. He makes Devin Booker look all of a sudden like the superstar he always should have been. And he makes DeAndre Ayton look like one of the most dominant bigs in the entire West. Chris Paul has done all this despite not being big in stature like Magic, or having a top 10 center like Magic, or playing in an era where people loved to do cocaine and smoke cigs instead of taking ice baths like Magic. If not Chris Paul, who is the greatest point guard of all time? There's gonna be a lot of Magic comments, so give me something better than that, and it better not be John Stockton, all right? He played with a creep. Maybe I'll make a video of that at some point. Like, subscribe, and go check out the other videos we've made. We talk about D'Angelo Russell being a snitch. We talk about Chris Paul's former Clippers owner being a racist weirdo. Go check those out.